numbers. We see what is their lead generation, how many leads are coming in, what is their conversion rate, what is their average dollar sale, what is their number of transaction, and what is their margin. Those are the 5 numbers that scale a business. So we literally extract those 5 numbers and then look at growth matrix that we can grow each one of those categories and what's the end result, because those 5 numbers literally compound on each other. So if I can get a 10%, a 10%, a 10%, a 10%, I'm going to get a 61% because they compound on each other.
When companies build a strong coaching culture, they're way more likely to see increased revenue than their counterparts. It's 51% versus 38%, according to the Human Capital Institute. Now, coaching is more than just soft skills. It's a business game changer. Today, we are exploring why that matters. Oh, and if you like the content, if you find it helpful and interesting, do us a favor and subscribe. It's a small gesture, but it means the world to us. And to help us unpack all of this, we've got Richard Bernstein, CEO of Mars Fitness Coaching. Rich knows this firsthand because he went from running a multi-million-dollar business to dedicating his career to coach business owners and executives, to train coaches coaching business owners and executives. Rich, my big question to you is, what inspired this change? How did this all happen?
The reason I made the change is, number one, I sold my business. And when I sold my business, my wife kicked me out of the house because I went from 100 hours a week to 0. That was, and she said, you got to do something. And to be very honest with everybody, I went out to have a beer with a buddy, and he said to me, rather than start a business, why don't you become a business coach? And I had never heard the word business and coach in the same sentence. And it gave me goosebumps. I actually thought, you know what? I think I'd really like to help business owners from looking from the outside in, because I never had someone like that. I had never had somebody give me, I had many consultants, but I never had a coach to sit there with me and help me implement things, to at least tell me that doesn't make sense from the outside looking in. So right away, as soon as I heard business and coach, I wanted to do that. And another thing that was really good was, I can't tell you how many nights I laid in bed counting tile on the ceiling, trying to figure, how am I going to come up with payroll? How am I going to, make ends meet? How can I, when you coach another business, it's not your business. From the outside looking in, you can help them, but it's a lot more peaceful of a job that they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones that are taking the risk. And I will tell you, being a business owner is probably the loneliest job in the world, because you can't tell anybody, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't come up with payroll. People will start leaving the company. You can't go home and tell your wife or husband, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? So it's very lonely. And having a business coach there with you to kind of a sounding board, a confidant to run strategies by, things like that, become really, really valuable for a business owner to not run it alone.
Mm. And how has your experience from running your own business, how has that shaped as you coach business owners and executives?
How did it shape me?
How did it shape your coaching?
Oh, well, I started loving giving them the outside perspective. What do I see? But I don't, as a coach, have to come up with solutions with them. I have to brainstorm with them and let them own those solutions. So to me, it was a big transformation where I could go in once a week, sit down with that business owner, ruminate over different strategies, make a little action plan for the week, and then I'm off to the next client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're holding space for the business owner to come up with strategies. Do you
Absolutely.
strategies at all?
Absolutely. And then as a coach, I'll say, okay, so how do we do that? What's the first step we have to take? And we literally make an action plan for the week. So he's not doing that by himself in his brain, that he only knows what he knows. Right now he gets an outside perspective, be an open mind, and go, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that. You'd be surprised how many times people will tell me a strategy. They'll go, Rich, I came up with a great idea. And then within 15 seconds of describing that idea, they say, no, that's not a good idea. It made sense in their head, but it didn't make sense in their ear when they said it out loud and they hear themselves say it. How often do we do that when we're alone? We don't. So
Yeah.
with a business coach, you can do that.
Mhm. And what's actually the difference between a consultant and a coach? I think a lot of people probably are not quite clear on the definition of a
I agree.
consultant and a coach or a coach sultant.
Hey,
If
Coach
that's a
Sultan,
word.
I'll tell you something because I had a lot of consultants in my previous business, and consultants come in typically and they'll look and evaluate different parts of the business, and then they'll write a report, and it's about this thick of everything you should do, and then
Mhm.
they leave it on your desk. Bye-bye. Pay me $30,000 for that report of what you should do. Believe me when I tell you, because I've had many of those reports probably still on my desk 20 years later, never cracked them open, didn't have the time to do that, was running around like a chicken. So that's typically what consultants do. They tell you what you should do and then leave. Coaches are there every week with you implementing, literally saying, what can we do to make that strategy work? What can we do to, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's come up with a new strategy. Now let's implement it. Here are the action steps we can do. And then I'll see you next week to make sure you do it. So there's an accountability piece, not just a clarity and a plan, but the accountability piece keeps things moving forward. Consultants typically don't have accountability.
Yeah.
This is what you and come up with strategies for that report, and then the discipline to implement it every week, not going to work. Waste of money.
So the coach helps you what a consultant does?
Typically not, only because consultants typically are professionals in one specific area, like a
Mhm.
marketing consultant or a sales consultant. So they come in and narrow down, and that's one thing. As a coach, I look at a holistic approach, not just to every part of the business, but to the businessman himself. Because that underlying, that business is a reflection of that owner. It
Mhm.
looks exactly like him. It feels exactly, it sees exactly like him. So to me, the real difference is I don't want to sit there and advise him and write a whole report and advise what he should do in all the departments of the company or specifically in sales. I want to come up with it with him so he owns it. He knows his business better than I do. I just want him to get clarity around what it is, and then I want to help him craft a plan, and then I want to hold him accountable to doing it. I don't need to be a specialist in sales in order to say, what do you think you need to do in sales? What would be the first step? Now, when do we have the time to do that? Let's open up your calendar and plug it in and list all the action steps. That came from the client. If I say it, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. If I get him to come up with the strategy through my line of questioning, he owns it. He
Mhm.
believes it. And when you believe something's going to work, it usually does.
So while we talk about belief and mindset, perhaps for many people talk about how mindset is sort of the invisible factor, right, for success. And from your experience, how much of business success is attributed to strategy, and how much of it is attributed to mindset?
Yeah, of course, strategy is important. But mindset is underneath all of that, believing that that strategy will work, having that leadership skills, being confident in yourself, being a leader in the organization is critical. And that comes from a mindset, a winning mindset. And a
Mhm.
lot of people say in the mindset is, oh, you just got to focus on your business. It's not just focus, it's focusing on the right things. And in my opinion, looking at so many businesses, there's really only three parts to every business. You got to market that business to get leads. You got to convert them. That's sales. And then you got to deliver an amazing product or service. That's all mindset. Typically, they're very good at the delivery part. But the marketing and the sales is where your mindset is, I believe this can work. I know I'm a good leader. I'm a great communicator. I can win in this game. You have to have that mindset, especially if you have a team behind you, because you're the leader of that team. And
Mm.
so it's really important to have the underlying mindset. And many times when I go into a business, the first thing I ask is, tell me about you, not about the business. And that'll tell me a lot about the mindset of that owner, having that winning mindset, having that I can do this. And then we just put our head down, get it done, and move on to the next project.
Mhm. And I guess that this mindset does also apply to the coach, right? Because the coach has to have that mindset as well, that I can do this.
100%. Well, they're a business owner also. If you're a business coach, you're a business owner yourself. So you need that same mindset. And I am going to tell you, most of the people that you're going to coach as a business coach are leaders on some level, or they wouldn't have opened the business. So you now have to be a leader to the leader. And what's interesting in coaching, different than my old business, than corporate, is that I'm not leading them where I want them to go. That's the beautiful thing about coaching, is I'm leading them where they want to go. But you
Mhm.
still have to have that leadership quality. You still have to have the passion and being assertive. And they feel that I'm comfortable, that you know what you're doing, that you can lead me to where I want to go.
Mhm.
All of that we teach at Mars Venus, by the way.
Mhm.
Mars Venus Coaching teaches that mindset to be able to go in and help a business owner. So they believe you are leading me, and I'm comfortable with that. I believe that.
That brings up my next question. Like, how can someone believe to be able to coach a business if they've never had their own business before, right?
Great question. Because we teach them every part of the business from the outside perspective, the proper questions to ask when it comes to marketing, and how do I extract strategies from that client. And then we get into sales. So we're looking at all the different parts of the business: marketing, sales, finance, time management, leadership skills, communication. We lay all that out and you learn to do it. You learn each part, because what a lot of people don't understand is coaching has nothing to do with the widget. Whatever product or service is not relevant to coaching the person. I had an auto mechanic once that I was helping him build his shop, and he kept saying to me, "But what do you know about fixing cars?" And I said, "I don't know anything about fixing cars, and I don't want to know anything about fixing cars, because I can always hire a guy to fix a car." And every time I would walk in his shop and he's underneath the car, I'm like, "Raymond, get out from under the car. You can't run an auto body shop under the car." He goes, "Well, I love doing this." That's the reason a lot of people get into business, is they love the widget. And they don't understand that the widget is not relevant to coaching them. Marketing, sales, and delivery. They already know how to deliver. They like that product, which is why I always recommend an amazing book called The E-Myth. To every business owner, I bring it in on my first session and say, "You got to read this book," because it's all about that. There was a woman who owned, as a college student, she worked in a bakery, and she fell in love with baking pies. And so she was baking all through college, made all this money. And then one day she goes, "I can do this. I can open my own bakery." And guess what? She opened her own bakery and found out very quickly that running a bakery has nothing to do with baking pies. It's not even relevant. It was about accounts receivable, accounts payable, taxes, payroll, hiring, leadership, buying ingredients. It had nothing to do with baking the pies themselves. And she hated it. She wound
Right.
up hating her own business.
But you see that, I mean, that I find can become a bit of an issue for business owners, especially if they're in the early stages of business, right? Because as you say, they actually need resources, they need people to help them do all
Yep.
the work, or do some of the work, because they can't do all the work if they want to grow. How can they afford, or how can they justify hiring a business coach?
Well, they have to make sure it's in the business plan. If they're a startup, most businesses fail in the first 5 years because they run out of resources. That's
Mhm.
why they actually run out of money. And part of the business plan of planning a business to open is making sure you have enough for an attorney, you make sure you have enough for an accountant, and you make sure you have enough for a coach, and you make sure you have enough for marketing. And then whatever that number comes to, I recommend doubling it, because you're always going to be, "Oh no, marketing's going to do better than I thought." It doesn't. Oh, sales conversion is going to be better than I thought. And it's not. And so we methodically teach our coaches to go through all the different parts of the business, because it's in that order. You have to market first. Once you start marketing, leads come in. Once you get those leads, you have to convert them. So we teach that second. Once you start converting leads, guess what? Money comes in. So you have to learn to manage money. where does that money go so that you don't run out of money or run out for taxes or run out for more inventory? And then once you do that, then now you got to start leveraging your time. So we start teaching time management because money's coming in. You got to start hiring. That's when you start running around like a chicken. And then time management, once you do that, how do you leverage your time? Hiring people. Once you start hiring people, how do you lead them? How do you communicate? How do you make sure tasks are being done? How do you hold them accountable? How do you be a leader in your own organization? So we actually teach it in that order because that's how a business scales. It goes from marketing, sales, finance, time management, leadership skills. You learn those five, you can run any business with any widget, any product or service.
Very cool. And you learn that, you teach that at Marcellus Coaching. You see,
We do every single part of that. And because that's how you scale a business. So like I said, the widget is not relevant, whether they want to bake pies or, a service-based business.
And in your experience, you've been doing different types of coaching. You've been doing life coaching, you've been doing business coaching, executive coaching. Do you want to explain for those of us who don't understand quite where the difference?
Yeah. Well, first of all, life and relationship is about the person. So the person you are always ties into a relationship as well, because you have a relationship with yourself, with your partners, with other people in your life, friends and family. So that's kind of the foundation. At Mars Venus, we always start with life and relationship because the most important relationship you have is with you. Once you learn that, then we go to business coaching, which is small business owners, the restaurant, the dry cleaner, all those small little businesses that are either mom and pop or they have 5 or 10 employees. Once we get to that level, it's all about one of three things, or all three, is time, team, and money. Those are the challenges that happen in a small business. Once you get to medium size, they typically don't worry about the money anymore, but the bigger issues become time and team. So executive coaching is more around leadership, communication, time management, team productivity, because all of that is connected to that business level. And so once they get up over 5, 10 million and they have 20 or 30 plus employees, now it's a whole different level of doing executive coaching. That's the differentiation between life and, but I will tell you one thing, even when I do business and executive, I still coach them on their life because whatever's going on in their life is going to go on in the business. If they're struggling with communication in the business, they're struggling at home with it as well, guaranteed. So their whole life improves. And like I said earlier, the business is a reflection of their life. So if they're struggling at home and there are challenges, they're going to bring that into the business. So we want to work on both at the same time, which is why we do them in levels. You can't do business coaching if you don't know life coaching.
Right. Okay. And do you have a preference? Do you have one kind of coaching that you love more than others?
Yes, but don't tell anybody. I like business coaching better, only for a couple reasons. One, it's easier to sell. Two, it's more tangible. It's easier to measure. I can do life coaching with a couple and get the relationship going, and then he says something stupid and puts his foot in his mouth, and suddenly they take a few steps back. That typically doesn't happen in business. Once we start to scale, you're not going to get one day I'm feeling great and the next day I don't. They're more linear in the result. So I personally I don't mind executive coaching. I've done it for a long time and helping corporate executives. But again, it ties back to their life. But to me, the business being so tangible that I can see results and so can they right away. I get an ROI a lot quicker.
Yeah. And you said it's easier to sell. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I can show them tangibly on paper, mathematically, that if we do this, this is what the result we should get. And if I add up all those results, how much more money, that's very tangible, which will either give them free time or, the reason they got into business was to give them a lifestyle. You know what I mean? And that doesn't happen a lot of times. What happens is as they build the business, it becomes their lifestyle. Waking up in the morning, running that business all day long, that they think it's going to give them freedom and it doesn't.
Right. Right.
A
And
business should be should be a vehicle to give you a lifestyle,
Yeah. Yeah.
and most it doesn't.
And is there also like if we go back to Mars Fitness coaching, how would you sell particular strategies
Yes,
that
we
you
first of all at Mars Venus, one of the most important things is, like I said in many podcasts before, is that it's all about building credibility. And so we use the workshop model at Mars Venus to build our credibility. And if I can get 5 or 10 or 15 business owners in a room and we do a presentation that knocks their socks off, mathematically, how we can scale a business, then we give, as a gift for coming to the workshop, a complimentary session in their office. And what we do in that complimentary session is we actually plug in their real numbers, because there's a mathematical formula for scaling. And if we put those real numbers in and project a small, just a 10% growth in each category, what is that going to be an outcome? And they see that outcome. It's so much easier to sell. If I'm going to pay you 2,000 a month and I'm going to make an extra 100,000 a month, I'll do that all day long. And so it's much easier to sell than I'm going to make your lifestyle amazing.
and how do you show this? Do you bring your calculator or
Yeah, yeah,
uh-huh.
we do. We actually plug in their numbers. We see what is their lead generation, how many leads are coming in, what is their conversion rate, what is their average dollar sale, what is their number of transaction, and what is their margin. Those are the 5 numbers that scale a business. So we literally extract those 5 numbers and then look at growth matrix that we can grow each one of those categories and what's the end result, because those 5 numbers literally compound on each other. So if I can get a 10%, a 10%, a 10%, a 10%, I'm going to get a 61% because they compound on each other. There are literally mathematical formulas to scale a business. And most business owners don't know about it because they're too busy under a car, fixing the car, trying to stay alive, trying to do marketing, run around like a chicken with their head cut off. They're too busy doing that to really sit down and look at what are the scalable numbers that I can control.
How do you improve a coach's confidence level? Like, are there certain tips, tricks that you can share with coaches out there?
Yes, I show them how to do this math because a lot of people are afraid of math. So I show them how to do this particular math. We practice it in class, we role play it, and they get very good at those 5 numbers and how to extract them out of a client, how to then add them up, and how to show them what the improvement would look like. All the answers, all the strategies, all the action steps are coming from the client, not from you. That's an advisor. That's a consultant. Like I said, I'm not advising people what to do. I'm getting it out of their head. They know their business better than I do, but I know the right questions to get them to think about the right things in business. And that's what we teach our coaches.
What if they get stuck? What if the business owner is stuck for strategies? What if they
don't come up with strategies? The business owner being stuck.
business owner? Yes.
Okay. So how could we find out? What if you did know? What kind of research can we do to look at your industry? I don't know auto mechanic business, but I know business, the foundation of business. So if an owner says, I don't have a clue what to do, great. What if you did have a clue? What if you had a friend that had that same issue? What would you tell him to do? Sometimes when it's not your business, you see it clearer. Or how can we do a little research? Let's look at AI. Let's look at Google. Let's come up with some strategies. That's the brainstorming part. But I'm not going to sit there and say, you need to do this or you should do that, ever.
Two more questions before we finish. Where do you see coaching headed in the next 5 to 10 years? Will there be?
I think it's exploding around the world, that people are literally, and AI cannot hold you accountable. If I turn off my phone, no AI is going to reach through my phone and say, Rich, did you do it? I don't mind turning it off. It's kind of like going to the gym. If I go to the gym by myself, I'll do the best I can. If my coach happens to be there, trust me, he's going to hold me accountable to doing one more push-up, one more pull-up. That's the accountability piece to another human. There are many times I do what my coach told me to do 5 minutes before I get on the call because I don't want to let him down. I don't want to say, no, I didn't do it this week, or not even get on the call. AI will never replace human accountability.
Mm. And if you had one piece of advice for someone who's thinking of becoming a coach, like why would they choose business coaching?
Well, first of all, the reason they would choose Mars Venus Business Coaching is we're the only school in the world that actually teaches how a man and a woman act and react very differently. So a woman business owner is going to be very different than a man business owner, and how we coach them. But if you like the art of business, why not check out Mars Venus Coaching? Just open the hood and look at the curriculum. If you look at that curriculum and it excites you, then you should do that. I love the art of business, even though it was hard in my business for 25 years. But when I sold it and I went, you know what, I could help other business owners. And like I said, I'm not up all night counting, tiles on the ceiling because it's their business. But I can truly help them from an outside perspective, coming up with strategies together and holding them accountable to doing it. Because like I said, it's lonely being a business owner. And now I have somebody to talk to. Do you know that I read an article that said, what is the number one thing that business coach, the value they bring to the business? You're not going to believe it. Sounding board. A sounding board.
Mhm.
Just having somebody to talk to. I went through that for 25 years. I was lonely. I wanted to cry some days. And if I just had somebody to talk to, would have helped me for the next.
Valuable.
And I'm thinking about doing this. Should I do it? I'm thinking about doing that. What are your thoughts from the outside? And I go, well, tell me why you think that'll work for you. Getting them to say it out loud is such a powerful tool, not just to be a good listener, but a good questioner.
Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you for your time and thank you for your insights. If you like the content, if you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe and make sure you tune in again every Tuesday when we publish a new video on gender intelligent coaching and the business around coaching. If you would like to find out more, click the link below in the description, schedule a free call with one of our team, and we're more than happy to talk you through what is required to become a Mars Venus coach. I am Helmut Waltova, and I see you next time.